So let's dive in. So let's start with English language. So what does each paper ask you to do? So obviously you have two papers. The first one is Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing. This focuses on one source, which is often a fictional extract. You are then tasked with analysing the language within the given extract. And then the final question, you have to write your own story based on a picture. Paper 2, Writers' Viewpoints and Perspectives. It includes two sources, often non-fiction texts from different time periods. So in this paper, you have to show your interpretation and understanding of the texts. You're being asked to use comparative analysis, analyse the language and its impact. And then in the final part of that exam, you have to write a persuasive essay or a speech. When I was looking at this, because obviously I did the Scottish, I don't know whether I said that actually, I'm from Aberdeen. When I did the Scottish equivalent of this, we called our version of English language like close reading, which I think is a good way to think about it because you're being asked to do a close reading of the text. You're asked to do in-depth analysis. So yeah, think about it as a close reading of the given text that you're being presented with. Good news, the marking criteria for both paper 1 and paper 2 is exactly the same. So you are marked on what are termed as assessment objectives. So AO1 to AO4 is all about section A of your paper, and then AO5 to AO6 is all about section B. So AO1 judges your ability to interpret and identify what the text is saying, as well as your ability to pick out the supporting evidence from the text. AO2 is all about analysis, so it judges your ability to analyse evidence that you have picked up and demonstrate what the effect of that evidence is upon the reader or upon your understanding of what is going on. This is the area where you will get marks for your use of literary terminology or literary devices. So saying like this metaphor or this personification, something like that. AO3 is the comparative assessment objective. So it judges your ability to compare the sources and their intentions and to talk about the effect of that and to talk about how whether one does it better than the other and vice versa. AO4 is all about your ability to use texts, to use quotes to support your analysis of the text. So sometimes, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on with the English literature exams, sometimes it's really crucial, well, all the time, it's very crucial that you pick a quote which is going to back up your argument. Don't throw in quotes for just the sake of saying, listen, I've shown you a quote. It always has to back up your argument. So this is the assessment objective that judges you on that. And then section B, AO5 and AO6. So AO5 is all about what you write. So it's your clarity, your organization in conveying your thoughts, how in-depth they are, how critical they are. And then AO6 is all about how you write. So it's all about your grammar, your punctuation, your spelling. So you do get marked on all of that. You have to be accurate with your spelling, with your punctuation, with your grammar. So that is how the marking scheme works. And as I say, it works across both. Marking criteria is something that can often be overlooked when you're revising, when you're thinking about sitting down at the exam, because you kind of think it's separate to you because it's something for the examiners really. But I would always recommend for any exam, looking at your marking criteria, making sure that you understand what is being asked of you so that you can make sure that you're answering to the best of your ability and to get the best marks, basically. So with paper 1, the way that I would go about starting it is by reading the summary of the extract. You're always given this text is all about blah, 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 blah. Make sure that you read that because then it means that you go into it understanding what it's going to be about. Then I would read the whole extract. When it comes to the questions, make sure that you pay attention to where you're being directed. The questions often will specify from lines 1 to 4, for example. So make sure that you are adhering to those to those pointers, because you will not get marks for anything out with that. You know, if you are given lines 1 to 4 and then you analyze something from line 5, sadly, you just won't get the mark because that's not what you're being asked to do. A tip that I would have for any exam or any sitting where you have a extract in front of you, I would recommend, if you can, bringing in different pens or pencils in different colors so that you can like color coordinate between the questions. So you can be like, right, and you'll see this in a second, but like, okay, question 1 is asking me to look at lines 10 to 15. So you can take one colored pen and kind of indent that section, and you can be like, right, that is exactly where I'm looking. I don't need to look anywhere else. So yeah, definitely those would be some of my big tips. So question 1, you're being asked to look at marking criteria AO1. So that's all about your understanding, your interpretation. It's worth 4 marks, and it's often phrased something like, read from lines blank to blank and list however many things about blank. So for example, the question that I've picked is, read again from first part of the source from lines 1 to 6. List 4 things about hyenas from this part of the source. Now, when you are being asked to list, you can literally just write bullet points. If you would rather write in full sentences, then that's fine. But bullet points might save you a bit of time, and it also just means that you can clearly list the evidence that you are providing. So this is an example. Oh, hello. There we go. This is an example of how I would annotate my paper. So as you can see, I have done little brackets to keep me inside that section. That's lines 1 to 6. And then the bits that I took out from the question are list 4 things, and it's about hyenas from this part of the source. So what I've done is I've gone and I have underlined anything that I think speaks to me about the hyenas. So if I was thinking about answering this question, I have decided that I'm going to say that hyenas attack in packs. My second point would be hyenas attack zebras, gnus, and water buffalo. My third point would be that hyenas don't just attack the older or weaker animals, they attack fully grown ones too. And then my fourth and final point would be that hyenas are clever. So when I was writing this example, I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I think I'd get 4 marks. It's actually worth 8 marks. It's worth double the amount of marks that you are asked to fulfill. So if you have a look at the marking criteria for this question, which is again another reason why looking at the marking is really important, it shows you which parts of the text give you 1 mark, 2 marks, 3 marks, and 4. So you would literally just get a point for saying that hyenas attack. It is as simple as that. Anything that tells you anything about what hyenas do will get you a mark. You know, hyenas are hardy and resilient, determined, tough. So the point that I had about hyenas attacking zebras, gnus, and water buffalo, that's all 3 separate points. And again, if you look over to the fourth, how you could get 4 marks on the second box, hyenas rise up from kickings and buttings immediately, never giving up for a simple lack of will. Again, it's 5 ticks, but it's worth 4 marks. And as you can see, that's an example of how you could write in a longer sentence, but still get all of the answers. So really thinking about what's going to save you time, what you're being asked to do, and not overcomplicating it when it comes to giving your answers. So it's your turn now. So we're going to go through this. I'm going to open up the chat function. So if you could pop anything that you note. Oh, hello. Sorry. If you can pop anything that you note from this into the chat. So again, read again from the source from lines 1 to 4. List 4 things about master from this part of the source. So again, you're just looking at the lines 1 to 4. And I'm just going to enable the chat. There you go. Right, you should now be able to comment. So please use this power correctly. And yes, if you can put anything there, anything that you think tells you about the master from this section of source. If I can find the chat again, because I've now lost it. But I'm going to give you, if you can have 5 minutes to do that. Actually, no, we'll do 3 minutes. I will then try and find my section again. So it's, oh, hello. It's 17 minutes past, so at 20 past, we will go over some of these answers. Already see some answers coming through. That's really great. Just another few minutes. That'd be fab. Again, this isn't the type of question that you need to spend overly long on, and it's quite good actually to, when you are practicing these answers, seeing how quickly you can do this, because it's just about your interpretation and understanding what the source is telling you. Fab. Right, that's 20 past. So let's go over some of these answers. They're all looking really great. So yeah, there's a lot about Master was a little crazy. Lots of people have picked up on that. He spent too many years reading books overseas. He had too much hair. He was a good man. Great. Crazy, talked to himself, had too much hair. He's a good man. Too many years reading books, too many years overseas. Great. This one, Zoe, there is so much in here that would probably, again, this question is only worth 4 marks. So you've probably got way more than you needed. You've probably got about 6 things in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, actually. So again, you wouldn't need that many points, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. He was a little crazy, did not return greetings. Yes, that's another good point. He talked to himself in his office. Is an academic. Yes, exactly. That's something that you can infer from the text, that he is an academic. He had too much hair. Did not return greetings. Little crazy. He read books overseas. Exactly. So let's have a look at what the marking scheme says. So again, it tells you it must be something that relates to the master. And then, yeah, it lists everything. So a lot of stuff that we've seen already from what you have written. So the master is an academic. He reads, he has traveled. He is a little bit odd. He talks to himself. He is a little bit crazy. Lots of people picked up on the fact that he was a little bit crazy. He responded to people sometimes. He eats meat every day. That was another one. And yes, he likes and loves reading. So hopefully from that example, you can see again, as long as you understand exactly what the text is asking of you and understand what's going on, you just have to pick up 4 things about something and note it down. So again, you can either do it in the bullet points or write it in longer sentences, whatever works best for you and however you want to think about it. So From this point in the exam, PEA, that is what I'm going to recommend. So you may have heard of something like this before or something along these lines. There's a lot of different acronyms that basically just mean the same thing. So if you have your own version, then stick with that. But PEA stands for Point, Evidence and Analysis. Excuse me. So point is quite obvious. You have to make your point. Evidence, you use a quote to support it. And then analysis, you analyze the quote that you have picked and back up your point and show what the impact is on the reader / what it tells the reader. Whether it's in English language or English literature, it is not enough just to provide a really great analysis of the quote that you've suggested. It's very important. Analysis is one of the most important parts of these exams. However, if you don't talk about the significance of what that means for you as a reader, or what that tells you about your overall understanding of the text, you're not going to be getting those higher marks. So always make sure that you point, evidence, and analyze. So this is just an example sentence that I wrote, or 2 sentences rather. So I make my point. I say that the main character of the extract is introduced as an energetic girl from the outset. Brilliant. That signals to the examiner exactly what I'm going to be talking about. I then use a quote to support that. I say that she is first described as skipping down the lane. So skipping down the lane. I then go on to analyze that and say that the choice of the verb skipping connotes energy and joy, thereby conveying to the reader that she may be excited to get somewhere or that she is a generally positive person. So as you can see, I've talked about what the word choice means. I've talked about what that suggests to you as the reader and how that then informs your understanding of the character. So yes, from this point on, PEA. There is a big difference from a lower mark and a higher mark in examples and in questions like these, and it all comes down to interpretation. So the same kind of quote, the girl skipped down the road. A lower mark answer might be the word skipped shows she wasn't walking. Okay, yes, it does. However, you're basically providing a definition for the word rather than any sort of analysis. So it's a bit kind of, yeah, whatever. And then answer B, the word skipped connotes a lightness to her movement, suggesting the girl was happy. Again, as long as you talk about what that tells you as the reader, that will always get you a higher mark for your interpretation. And it shows you that you're thinking critically about the text. So moving on to question 2. This talks about AO2. Obviously, this is your analysis portion of the assessment objectives. It's worth 8 marks. So I would suggest finding maybe 3 or 4 quotes to then analyze. And then it is often phrased as something like, look at lines blank to blank. How does the writer use language here to describe blank? And then it often gives you examples of what you could be looking at. A lot of your questions in your exams are really great because they signpost what you could be talking about, what you should be looking at. Gives you, if you're struggling a little bit, it just gives you those signposts that you can go, right, okay, I'm going to talk about this. So in this example, using the same source from question 1, the question is, look at lines 10 to 19 of the source. How does the writer use language here to describe the hyena's appearance? You could include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features, and techniques or sentence forms. So again, the really important parts that I've picked out from this question are that it's from lines 10 to 19. You're asked to talk about how the writer uses language to describe the hyena's appearance. That's very important. And then in the you could include portion of the question, it talks about words and phrases, language features, and techniques or sentence forms. So again, you should be thinking about literary techniques when it comes to language. So thinking about imagery, thinking about tone, thinking about adjectives, verbs, metaphors, the whole shebang. So again, this is the section that you're being asked to look at. This is how I would annotate my portion of the text. So I'm just going to enable the chat again because I would like you to tell me a little bit what techniques you think I've underlined. So have a look at this section. So I've underlined ugly beyond redemption, shaggy coarse coat, like the symptoms of a skin disease, the head is broad and too massive, but suffering from a receding hairline, ridiculously mouse-like. The nostrils are too big, the tail is scraggly and unwagging. So if you can use the chat just to tell me what kind of techniques you can pick out. So let's start with shaggy coarse coat. Does anyone have any ideas what shaggy coarse coat, what sort of literary technique or language device that might be? Yeah, if you have any ideas. And if not, then that's okay. We can just talk about it. So shaggy, did I enable that? Yes, I did. So shaggy coarse coat, I would say, oh, go back. Shaggy coarse coat, I would say is yes, it is a really detailed description of the hyena. It is alliteration, yes, lovely. So the alliteration, it's talking about shaggy coarse coat. So the alliteration of the C, it's quite a disruptive sound. So it makes you focus on it. The coarse coat, it almost gives you that feeling of how rough the coat might be. So it makes it quite a tangible thing for the reader to understand. Ugly beyond redemption, I would say that that is a hyperbole. That is something that is being made. It's kind of an over dramatic technique. Hyperbole is by making something overly dramatic, overly emphasizing it. You really get the point across by saying that it's ugly beyond redemption. Redemption, I think, have I got this? Yeah, redemption, it has connotations of like being saved from evil. So that's, it really shows you that how it really gets across how ugly the writer finds this hyena. Too massive, too big. What technique would that be? I know that they're quite far apart, but too massive, too big. What sort of technique do you think that would be? Too massive, too big. Give you a clue. It begins with an R. Give you a second. And if you've got any ideas about any of the other a repetition, yes, exactly, wonderful. This might seem like quite obvious, but it's just really good. It's really good practice to make sure that you understand what the techniques being used are. So yes, the repetition, too big, too massive. Repeating the two emphasizes how kind of disproportioned the hyena is and how the fact that the writer just thinks that it's completely it's ugly and the appearance is negative because it's too massive and too big. It's almost like it doesn't fit. Brilliant. What about the suffering from a receding hairline? Does anyone know what you could analyze in that section? Suffering from a receding hairline. Other than the image that comes into your head, what technique do you think that might be, or what effect would you say that that has on you as the reader? What kind of tone does it give? If anyone has any ideas, I'll just have a quick sip. Oh, hello, sorry. Quick sip of tea. Any ideas about the receding hairline? Well, the receding hairline, it's in some ways it kind of right, big word, anthropomorphizes the hyena, so it makes it human. By doing that, talking about the receding hairline, it's kind of, I would say that it's imagery, it's almost a simile, because by saying that it has a receding hairline, it conjures images of humans with a receding hairline, which is something that is quite comedic to think of on an animal. So therefore it's quite funny. It shows how the writer is making fun of the hyena's appearance. Yeah, it's definitely something to analyze there, because it's a shift in tone. Sometimes it can be really, and like I would do this as well. You can get really like bogged down with just commenting on like imagery and kind of techniques that you recognize. So thinking about something like tone can be really important because it shows that you're understanding more aspects of the text. So yeah, this is my example answer for that. And I have picked that line about being ugly beyond redemption. So I make my point. I say the writer's description of the hyena criticizes its unpleasant appearance and introduces the idea of it being a malicious threat. The adjective ugly labels the hyena as gross straight away, and this is further emphasized by the harshness of the diminished short sentence. The writer has also chosen the phrase beyond redemption because redemption has connotations of being saved from evil, as if the hyena's ugliness is symbolic of a deeper, sinister nature that cannot be reversed. So obviously I've taken one sentence, but I've kind of split it up to analyze it in different ways. The only way that I would say, just reading this right now, it's always good to have critiques for yourself. I would say that I haven't quite said about what that impression makes on the reader. I would just add in a sentence there at the end, maybe saying thereby showing the reader how ugly the writer finds the hyena, something like that. But as you can see, I've talked about the short sentence, it's dismissive, talked about the connotations of redemption, and then analyze that. And again, that's all to do with answering the question directly for what the writer or what the question is asking you, rather. So again, we're going to have you guys have a little go at doing something like this. So I'm going to enable the chat again. So for this one, you're being asked to look at detail in this extract from lines 5 to 15 of the source. How does the writer use language here to describe Ogwu's impression of the city? You could include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. So what is it? It's 10:34. If I give you 5 minutes to have a little think about that, even if you just pick out different types of techniques, you don't have to write a full answer. But if you can start to think about how you might analyze that and just pop that into the chat. If you think of any techniques, just pop them in and then we can discuss how you might go about analyzing that. But yeah, so sorry, keep doing that. I'll just read out the text, but if you want to start typing away, then that'd be great. So Ogwu did not believe that anybody, not even this master he was going to live with, ate meat every day. He did not disagree with his auntie, though, because he was too choked with expectation, too busy imagining his new life away from the village. They had been walking for a while now, since they got off the lorry at the motor park, and the afternoon sun burned at the back of his neck. But he did not mind. He was prepared to walk hours more in even hotter sun. He had never seen anything like the streets that appeared after they went past the university gates, streets so smoothed and tarred that he itched to lay his cheek down on them. He would never be able to describe to his sister Annalika how the bungalows here were painted the colour of the sky and sat side by side like polite, well-dressed men, how the hedges separating them were trimmed so flat on top that they looked like tables wrapped with leaves. So again, the question is asking you to think about how the writer uses language to describe Ogwu's impression of the city. So have a few more minutes, just continue to look at that, pick out any literary techniques that you think about, so whether there's any imagery, whether you can talk about the word choice, you could talk about the sentence structure, just have a little think and pop anything in the chat. That'd be great. While you're doing that, I think I'm going to write my own answer as well, by the way, so that I can share something with you too. maybe one more minute. If you've got anything at all, you could just start popping it in the chat. While you're doing that, I will, and while you're finishing up your part, I can tell you what I did. So I picked out the section down at the bottom about the polite, well-dressed men. So I said that this was a simile. And then my example answer, the best thing I can recommend for when you're talking about similes or metaphors is using the just as, so to structure. So you say something along the lines of, for this case, just as well-dressed men are smart, uniform, and organized, so too does this suggest a cohesion to the bungalows. This demonstrates Ugu's wonder at the city structure, possibly suggesting it is very different from his own. So again, you can see what this tells you about Ugu's impression of the city. It analyzes the simile and tells you a bit about that. So if anyone's got anything, then please pop it in the chat. Here we go. Oh, lovely. Stress and overwhelming environment. Yeah, definitely. I think you can definitely tell it's an overwhelming environment, but he did not mind. Yes, it's a very short sentence. It's quite out of place with the rest of the sentences in the extract. Dismissing the heat. Ugu's in, highlighting his eagerness to start work. Yes, exactly. He was prepared to walk hours even in the hotter sun. Oh, hello. Suggests Ugu's desperation, exactly, and commitment as he was mesmerized by the new city. Yes, exactly. In the line, he had never seen anything like the streets that appeared there to suggest Ugu is mesmerized by the sights he sees in the city. They are new to him, nothing like what he's seen before. Exactly. So something like this, it's exactly what I've done, talked about what you're speculating about why he might be so entranced by the city. The writer uses metaphors to describe Ugu's first impression of the city. Brilliant. You've got your point. In the metaphor, too choked with expectation, we can affirm that he feels very overwhelmed and anxious by the scenery, by the change in scenery, as well as this in the quote, streets so smooth, this alliteration, very good, connotes a sense of excitement that he is impressed. Whoa, brilliant. Oh, brilliant. Fabulous, guys. Yes, this is all wonderful. We won't go into every single answer, and I will turn that off just for a second. Brilliant. The noun sky has connotations of expansive and never ending, further emphasizing Ugu's everlasting awe and joy produced by the city. Brilliant. Amazing. Yes. So again, this is a little section from the, have to remember that. It's a little section from the marking criteria. So again, you've seen what I might pick out from that sentence, that extract rather. So too choked, too busy, sun burned the back of his neck. He did not mind. And then in the marking criteria, it talks about what you may get an AO2 mark for. So again, the metaphor, too choked with expectation, repetition, too choked, too busy, alliteration, burned the back of his neck, the sibilance of the street so smooth, the hyperbole of to walk hours more even in hotter sun, simile, sat side by side like well-dressed polite men, trimmed so flat on top they looked like cables wrapped with leaves, and then also, yeah, sensory imagery. So painted the color of the sky, streets so smooth and tarred that he itched to lay his cheek down on them. That's a really specific image. That really tells you something about how smooth the streets are. So yeah, brilliant, wonderful, amazing analysis. Well done. So yeah, fab. Let's go on to question 3. So this one stays on the AO2 assessment objective, and again, it's worth 8 marks. So you're maybe thinking about 4 quotes to analyze. But however, this time a question is often about structure, not language. So I wouldn't, try to veer your brain away from things like images and the nouns and the verbs. Now you have to think all about structural devices. So this is an example question that you might get. Now you need to think about the whole of the source. This text is from the middle of a novel. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? You could write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning of the source, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and any other structural features that interest you. So yeah, structural features could be like the text at a whole level, so beginnings, endings, perspective shifts. Could be thinking about it at paragraph level, so topic changes or how cohesive the paragraph is. And then on a sentence structure, thinking about how, like, as we've seen, how one sentence which deviates from the norm influences how you then perceive the paragraph to be. So again, you have to think about the whole of the source this time. So it's not just a section. And you have to think about what kind of structural journey source takes to interest you as a reader and why it might interest you as a reader. So I would say think about it as the beginning, middle, and the end. Again, I would try and put, like, it can even just be like a tiny faint line that divides the beginning, middle, and end, so that you can see that. I would think about what kind of structural features show you that there's been a change of, like, whether the character has made a change, whether there's a change in the journey. Think about if you know, is there some sort of structural technique which like piques your interest, and then the conclusion or the end of the source kind of brings you back down. Yeah, think about what happens, and I would suggest maybe for the beginning, middle, end, using PEA for each section. And yeah, thinking about the tone as well. So the structure can often influence the tone, just as language can. So thinking about whether the tone is different at the start to the end. Does the character go on a journey? Are they affected by what happens through the middle? Do they learn anything new? Do you, as the reader, learn anything new from the start to the end? Yeah, these are all important things to be thinking about in regard to question 3. Moving on to question 4. Now this goes on to AO4, which is all about the use of quotes to support your critical evaluation. And it's worth 20 marks. I've said maybe 10 quotes from the text. I would say anywhere between about 8 and 10 would probably be fine. And this is often a slightly comparative question, and you need to argue both sides. So you're often asked, to what extent do you agree? So from this section, this question relates to the extract about the hyenas. So the question says, focus this part of your answer on the second part of the source from lines 20 to the end. Again, you're being told where to look. A student said, this part of the story where the hyena behaves wildly is funny rather than frightening. The writer suggests that the hyena is actually no serious threat to Pi. To what extent do you agree? In your response, you could consider your impressions of how the hyena behaves, evaluate how the writer presents the threat of the hyena to Pi, support your response with references from to the text. So what I would suggest, the kind of rough structure that I would suggest doing this, obviously when it's talking about to what extent do you agree, as I've said, you need to argue both sides. So what are you actually being asked in this question? So it says that the hyena behaves wildly and it's funny rather than frightening. So I would say in paragraph 1, I would talk about why the hyena is funny. And then in paragraph 2, I would talk about why the hyena is frightening, and then come to a conclusion. Choose whether you, as you individually, find the hyena more funny or more frightening based off of the analysis that you've given. Which, you know, are there more examples of it being funny than frightening? Are the techniques that are used suggesting that it's more funny than frightening? You have to come to some sort of conclusion based on the analysis that you have provided. So yeah, again, quite easy. Just think about what the kind of extract that you're given is asking of you. And I would always say, like, if you're being asked to argue against like 2 things, have one paragraph for each of them. So finally, in paper 1, we move on to question 5. So this is the big one. And again, this is like section B of your paper. So this is all about AO5 and AO6, which is what you write and how you write. So it's worth 40 marks. So it is a big one. 24 of those marks are allocated to content and organization, and 16 marks are allocated for technical accuracy. So this is all about your ability to show that you can write a creative and coherent and well-structured story. Most of the time you are given either a picture to write from, or you're given, like in this example, pardon me, write a story about a human meeting an animal. If you sometimes struggle with creative writing, I would say always use the picture as a prompt, because it gives you something physical that you can return to if you are struggling to think of something. It gives you visual things that you can look at, as we're going to go through in a second. Again, I would always write a little plan for this kind of essay, this kind of essay. Make sure that you know what's going to happen in the beginning, middle, and the end. Again, you're being asked to write something that is engaging for the marker. So having a little story is always a good idea. Before you start writing, always ask yourself the kind of classic who, where, what, why, when questions, but specifically ask yourself who's in the picture if you're picking the picture. If you're not picking the picture, think about who your characters might be. What's happening, what's going to happen at the beginning, is something going to change, and what does that mean for the end of your story? What are the different emotions in your picture? What does the environment look like? Are there any smells? What is there, if you're outdoors, what's the weather like and how does that influence things? Are there colors? What kind of colors are there and how can you analyze those? And again, for the picture, does anything stand out to you? Is there a character that you're specifically drawn to? Is there aspect of the picture that you're specifically drawn to? Think about all of this before you then go to start writing. Oh, it's all a bit wobbly here. Sorry about that. So these would be some of the criteria for getting an AO5 upper level answer and an AO6 upper level answer. So you're asked to have, this is for content and organization, you have to have convincing and compelling communication, you have to have tone, which is supported throughout the story, that it's appropriate for what you're trying to do to the reader. Try and use extensive vocabulary. So instead of saying like the girl looked nice, having something a bit more exciting for the reader. When you're organizing it, think about having structural features. So don't have just the same length of sentences. Thinking about what's the word I'm thinking of? It's not coming to me, but thinking about like punctuating, that's it. Think about punctuating your story with shorter sentences, keep the reader on their toes. And then for AO6, thinking about using lots of different sentence forms, using punctuation correctly, make sure that you're spelling things. If you are worried about your spelling, stick to words that you know, but do try and also take those chances where you can. So, in 5 minutes, I would like you to please write me a few sentences which tell me as the reader what you can hear from this picture, what animal you are looking at, and how you feel about that animal. This is just a little exercise to get you thinking creatively. So I will enable the chat function. I will probably turn off my microphone and my video, but I instead of putting a timer on, because that will take away the picture, it is now 52, so at 57 we will come back together and share some things. I'm going to write a few sentences as well. So yeah, just thinking about, just pick some of the animals, think about what you can hear. If you have any other ideas, if there's something else that pops out to you about the source, then please tell me about that. But I'll give you 5 minutes, starting Okay, you have 1 more minute if you can start popping things into chat, and we will go over that as well. Fabulous. Right. Hello. Um, I have written my own little things, and I've actually just realized I've not hit my own my own criteria. However, it will hopefully give you an example. So if you have anything else, just please pop it into the chat, and I'll have a look in a second. I have one from the last time I gave this performance. My head is so actor centric. Gave this seminar. So the one that I wrote then was, I watched in awe as the baby elephant saluted his trunk in the air, performing like an actor on the stage. Very fitting. So yeah, I don't know if you can see that little baby elephant in the picture. It really stood out to me. So yes, in that case, like things that I would look for as an examiner in that sentence would be like the word choice of awe and what that suggests about the narrator. The word choice of saluted, his trunk in the air, what that tells you about how the narrator is perceiving the elephant. You know, saluted, it has connotations of something respect in the military, and then performing like an actor on the stage. So again, the simile. So just as an actor performs to entertain, so too does this suggest that the baby elephant is providing joy to the people at the zoo. And then today, I wrote. I hadn't noticed it before, but the little clump of the giraffes. So I said the giraffes were clumped together as if their three protruding necks all came from one body, like the hellhound Cerberus. It made this normally unassuming and peaceful animal a tad frightening to me. So again, like the word choice of like clumped, what that suggests about how close together they are. Their protruding necks, like the hellhound Cerberus. I was just looking at them and I was like, it does look like a three-headed dog, or like Fluffy from Harry Potter. Just made me think of that, and I was like, oh, that would be a fun image to try and convey to the examiner. Made this normally unassuming, peaceful animal a tad frightening, the kind of juxtaposition in that sentence. Lovely. Let's have a look at what you guys have written. Do, 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 do. I can hear the roaring lions, the trunks of the elephants, and the awakening sound of the grizzly bears as they entertain the crowd. Lovely. I'm looking straight at the king of the jungle, the yellow monster. Ooh, lovely. Yellow monster with razor sharp teeth. That's a really interesting sentence. I feel intimidated as the lion stares me down, intruding into my eyes. Wonderful. Yeah, very descriptive language. Overwhelmingly loud. Elephants' trumpets. Very good. Lions roaring, water cascade. Cascading is one of my favorite words. Water cascading and crashing onto stone walls. Excited families chattering. Brilliant. Feelings of excitement, possibly fear and awe and sheer number of the animals. Yeah, wonderful. Eerie sounds everywhere. Oh, lovely. Huge beasts. That's great. That's a great descriptive word, the beasts. Oh, I've lost my place. The tigers staring at you with eyes of terror. Very good. I walked through the new animal park with the atmosphere a little bit different. Messy crescendo, making my ears bleed. Wonderful. The food was incredible. They had fun with it, causing it to look like animals. It just, oh, hello, lovely. Stumbled across the king of the jungle. Very good. My sister shrieked in fear and I let out a chuckle. Very good. There's a nice juxtaposition with that as well. Shows you the different emotions. My mother glared at me like it was my fault she was scared. Very good. The screeching of the birds. Sorry if I missed your answer. I'm actually just going to stop the thingy as well, just so that we can get through some of these. Upon entry immediately, the discordant sounds of each animal, brilliant. Monstrous size yet wise look, brilliant, lovely. Other majestical sounds, brilliant. The glare of the sun hit me, brilliant. Children around chattering without a care in the world. Um, Brilliant. Yeah, this is all really, really great stuff, guys. If you're anything like me and you love writing, this was always like one of my favorite parts of the exam, as it's just a place to, yeah, get your imagination flowing, thinking about, from a kind of exam perspective, yeah, thinking about what language you can be using, how you can convey meaning to the examiners, how you can make it something exciting for them to read. Noise beckons us into the park. Brilliant. Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely fab. So again, this is why I love taking the picture as a prompt as well. I write a lot of poetry in my spare time, and if I'm a bit blocked, I will always use a piece of art or a song to inspire me, and I will just write about that. So again, if you are a bit worried about this part of the exam, I would always say go for the picture. Lovely. We've done a lot of concentrating, so we're going to have a little 5-minute break. So I'm going to put a timer up on the screen for 5 minutes. It's 11:02, so we'll come back at 11:07, and then we will go on to paper 2 of the exam. So lovely. I will see you all in about 5 minutes. Lovely. Right. Hello, welcome back. Hope that was a nice little break. We're going to go through paper 2 now for English language, and then we'll have a slightly longer break for the next part of the section. So don't worry if you feel like you didn't get a massive break. We will have a slightly longer one after this section. So Ooh, let's move on to English language paper 2. So as I mentioned before, this has the exact same marking criteria. So you should just be carrying on the exact same skills from paper 1 to paper 2. However, this paper is a lot more comparative. You have to compare two sources. So the biggest piece of advice, pardon me, that I can probably give you is focus on both sources at the same time. It can be really, it can feel really natural to think, okay, well, I'm just going to look at source A because I understand source A and I'm going to get into this. And then you can run out of time to talk about source B. And as we will go on to see, there are some questions, well, in any question where you're being asked to compare, if you only talk about one source, you're going to really limit yourself with the amount of marks that you can get. So I always say to people, if you ever write something about source A, you have a couple of sentences where you analyze that, and then the next thing you talk about source B. So always have it in a balance. There are lots of ways that you can link these sections. So I would always recommend having a little bank of like linking words. So like, again, in this example, firstly in source A, similarly in source B. So again, you could use words like however, moreover, on one hand, on the other hand, whilst, likewise. For this paper, it's always really good to think of your examiners as aliens. They have just landed. They do not understand anything about English language, about English. So it's really important that you make everything super clear and kind of spell things out for the examiners. This is all about your ability to make inferences from the text, show that you understand the text, and then use your comparative analysis skills. So always try to think about it as you're explaining things to people who know nothing about the subject. So with question 1, it's all about AO1, which is your ability to understand and make inferences from the text. It's worth 4 marks. It's very similar to the question 1 in the first paper. So you're asked to reread, again, a short section, and then shade in the statements that are true. So, excuse me. For example, in this one, shade the circles in the box you think are true, choose a maximum of 4 statements because it's worth 4 marks. It gives you the section that you're looking at, so it's lines 1 to 7, and then it gives you 8 statements, and you have to judge and, based on your understanding of the text, work out whether or not you think something is correct. So as you can see in the answer in the marking scheme, it goes FT, 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 FT. So it's very, very simple. It's not always in that sort of a rhythm. So again, it's like, yeah, the writer is at the start of his journey, so there will be something, I think, if I remember correctly from that source, it's something like, if you got a statement like this, the writer is at the start of his journey, you would either see a sentence that's like, it has been 12 days since my journey began into my 5-month trip, in which you could say, okay, yeah, the writer's still at the start of his journey. But if it said something like, I am 12 days into my 2-week journey, then you'd be like, oh, well, he's only got 2 days left. So it's all about making inferences like that. So again, we're going to let you have a little chance at doing that. So I'm going to open up the chat again. Just I'm not gonna mute myself or take myself away. Just have a look at, read the first part of source A from lines 1 to 10. Choose 4 statements below which are true. So you have the statements on the left, pardon me, and then you have the extract on the right. So the first statement, the cinema program was every Saturday morning. Can you tell me whether that is true or false? And I will give you a clue. It is in the first section. It's in the first sentence, whether this is true or false. Can anyone tell me if it is true or false? Wait a second. Again, this question is, as long as you understand what's going on, it can be as simple as this kind of thing. Who's going to tell me? Well, I'll tell you. Oh, hello. That's going on a bit. Statement A is true. The cinema program was every Saturday morning, and literally the first three words of the extract are every Saturday morning. So it tells you that that statement is true. Statement B, the cinema program was short. Can anyone tell me in the second sentence whether this statement is true or false? False. Exactly. Very good. It literally says the program just went on and on and on. Section C, statement C. The children all came from the same street. Is there anything to suggest that this is not the case? That the children all came from the same street. Is that true or is that false? It is false. Yes, exactly. The children are not all from the same street. There's children from Margaret Street, Irene Street, Sunbeam Street, and so on. The children formed a large group as they moved through the streets. Is that true or is that false? There is a specific word that tells you exactly whether that is true or not. Exactly, yes. So D is true. You know that by the fact that the writer has chosen the word swarm. So a swarm of children. So that tells you that they did form a large group. E, the Odeon was in Rockdale. Is that true or is that false? Is the Odeon in Rockdale? E is true. Yes, exactly. It literally says moving along the rocky road, the rocky road, moving along the Rocky Point Road towards Rockdale, where the Odeon stood. The Odeon is in Rockdale. Children wore shoes. Is that true or is that false? And again, there is one word that literally tells you whether or not this statement is true. Exactly. They have bare. Oh, it's skipped again. Exactly. They have bare feet. Very key. G, the children went to the cinema on foot. Is that true or is that false? That the children went on foot, so they didn't go, or did they not go on bikes? Yes, they did go. It's true that they went on foot because again, it talks about the fact that they were walking barefoot. And then H, finally, the children had really tough feet. Is there anything that indicates that that statement is true or false, that they had rough feet? For what is that, H? Yes, exactly. So it is true. Again, next to the bare feet, it says leathery. So again, leathery has connotations of being really tough. So yes, the children had really tough feet. As you can see, again, this question is something that shouldn't take you too long. It's quite self-explanatory, and as long as you understand and can make appropriate inferences, as you can all see, this is the marking scheme, then you will be absolutely fine with this question. So question 2. This goes on to AO1 again. Excuse me, I'm going to have a little sip of water. So it's worth 8 marks. So again, I would be thinking about maybe 3 or 4 aspects to analyze. You're being asked to compare using PEA. So again, use PEA. Make sure that you're making your points, you're providing the quotes, and you're analyzing that in detail. So you have to compare both sources. So again, I would use the rule of, like, if you say one thing about one source, don't move on to a different point until you have talked about whether that is the same or different in the second source. So for example, this is what one of the questions might be worded along the lines of the writers in source A and B are traveling on different types of trains. Use details from both sources to write a summary of what you understand about the differences between the two trains. So again, pick maybe, like, if there are four differences, then pick 4. If there's 3, think about the 3 and analyze that in a lot of depth. And again, if you only use one source, you only get a certain amount of marks. I think the marking scheme says something along the lines of if L1 is achieved, but it's only used with source A, give them a maximum of 3 marks. And again, it's worth 8, so you really don't want to be missing out on those key points. So we're going to just go over some examples of like the different types of answers that you could give. So how you can get from a level 1 answer to a level 4 answer. Again, before you go on to talk about it, I would recommend taking those different colored pencils, circling, well, so for example, this one wants you to talk about the differences. So I would take a pencil and circle anything in source A that it tells you about train travel. And then I would take the same colored pencil, but for source B, I would underline the differences. Again, just so that you have specific things to reference back to. So a level 1 answer for this question would be something along the lines of the train in source A is big as it has lots of carriages because it says 5 sleeping cars. This is different to the train in source B, which is smaller. The train in source B is not big as it is described as a little engine and it has 1 carriage. Okay, yes, it shows that you understand and it shows that you recognize that that is a difference. But apart from that, it doesn't really do much else. It is a very basic level answer. However, this is how you can turn it into a level 4 answer. So again, this is using PEA with a little sentence in the middle, which is highlighted in blue to show that you are comparing. So in contrast to level 1 to level 4, you can see it's a lot more detailed. It uses PEA twice within the same paragraph. So it makes the initial point that the train in source A is being used to transport mail and people, and so has a small mail van, a dining car, and 5 sleeping cars, showing both the advances in train manufacture and the commercialization of rail travel to enable long journeys by providing eating and sleeping facilities. This sophistication reflects significant progress in train travel and is a complete contrast to source B. That is key, complete contrast to source B. Brilliant. It shows that you understand that you're being asked to show differences, and it shows that you're going to be showing something completely different. You make your point again by saying that the steam engine in source B is an earlier model and is therefore much simpler in its design. In source B, the train is just a functional uncovered carriage with benches, as the purpose at this earlier stage of invention is to develop the mechanics of the engine, not to provide more elaborate passenger facilities. So hopefully you can see how much more in depth the level 4 answer is, how much more it goes into thinking about what the kind of repercussions are and what that tells you about rail travel, and the fact that noting that A is much more sophisticated, it's made for commercial use through rail travel for people, whereas in source B that's not the case. It's literally just for the purpose of it's a much earlier invention. It's looking at the developing the mechanics of the engine. It doesn't need to be a passenger train yet. So yeah, hopefully this will show you how you can use PEA to get a really in-depth level 4 answer. Moving on to question 3. This then goes on to AO2, which is your analysis question. It's 12 marks. So again, I'd maybe aimed at like 5 to 6 quotes. So it could be something along the lines of, you now only need to refer to source A. Question 3 is normally only about one of the sources again. And like your paper 1, it then talks about how does the writer use language to describe the train crash. So again, you're going to want to use PEA. This obviously it's talking about Romeo. I just wanted to show you again how you can go from a level 1 answer to a level 4 answer when using PEA in a bit more detail. So again, for this question, you want to be looking at language techniques. So you want to be looking at whether, word choice of the nouns, the verbs, thinking about the adjectives, thinking about any imagery, thinking about tone, everything like that. So for a PEA answer that is level 1, I've said Romeo asks what light through yonder window breaks, and this shows that there is a light coming through the window. Okay, yes, it's very similar to the example I gave you before. You're basically just saying what happened. You're not analyzing it. Level 2, Romeo asks what light through yonder window breaks. The word light suggests that whatever he is seeing is bright and dazzling. Okay, yeah, you're getting there a little bit. It's the beginnings of an analysis. but it's not really talking in depth about what that suggests Romeo is thinking. However, when you move on to level 3, using the same quote, the word light connotes a dazzling or shining element, whilst breaks suggests that this presence has emerged suddenly, possibly surprising Romeo. So yeah, that's better. You're starting to think, well, you've started to analyze more aspects of the one quote, and you're talking about what that tells you about the character. And then a level 4 answer with the same quote, the questioning element of this sentence suggests Romeo could be confused or excited in anticipation of seeing Juliet. The noun light suggests that he sees Juliet as an angelic or holy being who provides comfort and could save him from his mercy, save him from his misery, thereby demonstrating the depth of his affections for her. So again, you can see this is really good analysis. You're talking about the fact that it's, even though I've put it as a full stop and I haven't included a question mark, always remember your grammar, even though it's a question, so it suggests something to you about his state of mind, the kind of personification of Juliet as the light, or in the next sentence as the sun, suggests how he's thinking of her as something angelic and holy, and how that contrasts with what we already know about Romeo, and the depth of his affections for her. So yeah, when you're thinking about question 3 for paper 2, use PEA, go into a lot of detail, and yeah, you'll be grand. Then going on to question 4, it is the AO3 aspect of the marking criteria. So again, this one is all about the comparative aspect. So it's worth 16 marks. And again, you have to consider both sides. So an example question would be, compare how the writers convey their different feelings and perspectives about their experiences of traveling on the train. In your answer, you could compare their different feelings and perspectives, compare the methods the writers use to convey their different feelings and perspectives, and as ever, support your response with references to both texts. So what I would suggest doing is splitting it up into 2 separate paragraphs. Paragraph 1, you talk about what their feelings are, and paragraph 2, talk about the methods. So again, it would be good to, instead of doing it like one paragraph for source A, one paragraph for source B, using it, finding any things that so if they use any of the same literary techniques to describe their different feelings or perspectives, you could analyze whether one is more or less effective than the other, whether you relate to one or more, whether you relate to one more than the other. And again, yeah, thinking about maybe like 4 quotes each per paragraph, so that you can provide some in-depth analysis. But yeah, just think about making sure that you PEA and that you are comparing whatever it is you're being asked to analyze. So in this case, the different perspectives or feelings. And then finally, the big one for this paper, which is question 5. Again, it's very similar to how paper 1 is structured. This is section B, so it's all about AO5 and 6, how and what you write. And again, it's worth 40 marks. Your task with question 5 for paper 2 will always be either to persuade or argue. So this is your chance to write a persuasive essay or a speech. The example that I had in the paper that I was looking at was cars are convenient, comfortable, and safe, and save time. However, we need to use them less by making public transport such as trains, trams, and buses cheaper, more reliable, and easier to access. Write a speech to be given at a meeting of your local council in which you argue your point of view on this statement. So one of the biggest things I can recommend for question 5 is forest. So this is talking about the different techniques, persuasive techniques that you can use. If you ever watch any politicians giving speeches, or if you do debating at school, these will be techniques that you are very familiar with. They're persuasive. So I would recommend writing this acronym in the margins of your paper, and then ticking it off when you've done at least one of each. So the A in A Forest stands for alliteration. Again, alliteration, as we've seen with the previous paper, alliterative words stick out in our brains. And so if you pick them on, if you make the point to use alliteration or specific words that you want the listener or the reader to remember, that will probably be very effective. Facts, so facts, again, just something that is true, something that is known. Your opinions, whenever you're doing a persuasive essay, getting in your own opinions, using words like I strongly believe, in my opinion, blah, blah, blah. You have to make it personal to you, because when you speak from a place that is more personal, it is always in some way more persuasive and more relatable to your reader or your examiner. R stands for rhetorical questions. So again, you'll have seen rhetorical questions come up in many different scenarios. But yeah, asking questions of the examiner, making them think about their own perspective. E stands for emotive language. So yeah, words that can elicit some sort of emotional response and that will get the examiner thinking. Similes or statistics for S. So again, similes, you know what a simile is, something that is like something. Statistics, you can, as long as it's feasible, you can make up statistic for your question. So the one about cars, you could make up a statistic that was something along the lines of 30% of children surveyed said that they would prefer to cycle to school. Something like that. As long as it sounds feasible, you can just make it up. And then the final T stands for triplets. So it's something, I don't know the exact science behind it, but it's something in our brains. We love things that come in three. Again, it's something that you'll see politicians or people who are giving speeches do a lot. You say one thing, you say another, and then you round it off with a third. Yeah, always using triplets. And as I say, write this in your margin and tick it off once you have done at least one of each. And that means that your essay will be filled with persuasive techniques. So again, it's your turn now. So what I would like you to do in 5 minutes, again, I can't put a timer on the screen, but we'll do it, yeah, around about 31 to 36. Write a small paragraph, if you can, using 3 of the aforist techniques. I'll write the aforist techniques in the comments as well, so that you, alliteration, well, yeah, I'll write them in. So this one, you have to write a letter to the Minister for Education explaining your point of view on this statement. So this statement suggests that teenagers are not like adults. They learn and socialize differently and need to sleep at different times. Education needs a radical rethink to meet the needs of students. So yes, if you can write me a little paragraph in 5 minutes, once I have been able to type, that, pardon me, uses 3 of the A4Okay, that's 32, and I've just popped them in, and it's not dimiles, it is similes. I just can't type. Yes, if you will give you 5 minutes, so 11:37, I will come back and we will go over some answers. So yeah, just pop them into the chat and I will write my own. Okie dokie, right, fabulous. If you are still writing, just can carry on, just pop them into the chat. I can see there's a few answers already. So while you are popping that in there, I will go over my ones. So I have used triplets, I've made up a statistic, and I've used emotive language. Pardon me. So for my triplet, I said we need swift, stable, and superior reforms to education. So I've kind of used triplet and I've used some sibilants to really hammer home that point. Swift, stable, superior reforms for education. My statistic to do with the question, I tried to think of something that was feasible. So I said that 45% of students surveyed felt that their needs educationally were not being met. So again, hopefully that would you would think, oh, that's actually quite a high percentage. So we need to think about that. And then with emotive language, I said, I urge you to consider the devastating impact these outdated and archaic standards for education my grammar is not very good. I urge you to consider the devastating impact of these outdated and archaic standards for education. So again, like devastating impact, thinking about how that's going to devastate the younger generation. Outdated and archaic standards for education. Archaic connotes and suggests something that is, from the Stone Age. It's been so long since we thought about that. So yeah, that would be my example. So let's go through some of yours. I believe that this statement is true. Wonderful, brilliant to assess whether or not you believe the statement is correct. Scientific studies show that 70% of teenagers sleep later and wake up later, giving them a more fulfilled sleep cycle and making them feel refreshed. Brilliant. In my own opinion, brilliant, get your opinion in. I know that not all teenagers will benefit from the normal teaching methods and would rather have a different learning curriculum. If you were a teenager, would you want to follow something that doesn't benefit you to the maximum? Brilliant. You're putting the examiner, you're putting your reader into a position where they have to consider their own ideas. So fab. Strongly agree with the statement and believe the education system needs an extreme, rapid, radical re-evaluation where did we go? To accommodate the differing needs of teenagers compared to adults. Firstly, schools require teenagers to wake up at earlier times. Scientific evidence has proven that teenagers need to sleep at different times. Brilliant. So why should they be expected to be prepared for 8 hours of continuous learnings when their very brains are not adapted to function at such a time? In a survey conducted, 70% of children even agreed their lack of sleep has hindered their ability. Brilliant. This is all really great. So persuasive. Dear Minister of Defence, very, very good. I myself am a teenager, yet relating it to yourself, brilliant. I think that, and I know I will have a biased opinion, however, it can be quite the opposite. 80% of teenagers have said they found it extremely difficult to wake up in the morning. Yeah, I feel you. However, 75% said that they found waking up earlier at the weekends. Why? Because they get up much later. Yes. Brilliant. You're talking about the structure. I agree with the statement and urge you to urge. Whenever you're talking about whenever you're trying to persuade someone, saying I urge you to consider blah 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 is brilliant. Talking about the effects. What's going on? Brilliant. Yes, talking about affecting mental health. Fabulous. Yeah, so as you can see, using the A-Forest system, you are using these using these persuasive techniques in a way that doesn't really actually even feel like you are when you're just reading it, it doesn't necessarily feel like, okay, this person is checking things off. It just free flows and it just becomes part of your persuasive rhetoric. So yeah, absolutely fabulous. Well done, everyone. So